Alright, today we're talking about the episode that made everyone question reality. A parasite invasion? A full-blown psychological horror disguised as a sitcom? Absolutely. Beth proving she might be the most dangerous Smith? Oh, you better believe it. Listen.
That is incredibly vague backstory.
Beth, I'm your father!
Oh, are you, Dad? Are you?
Let's talk about how Beth went from casual wine mom to full-on apocalypse survivor in one of the most chaotic Rick and Morty episodes ever. Let's get into it. The parasites invade, and Beth ain't having it. So the episode starts like a normal dysfunctional Smith family breakfast, until, BAM! Uncle Steve gets absolutely vaporized by Rick. Why? Because he never actually existed.
Is an alien parasite.
But I've known him my whole life.
No, you haven't, Jerry. These telepathic little bastards, they embed themselves in memory.
And just like that, we're in a paranoia-fueled nightmare. The house is infested with memory parasites. They insert fake memories, making you think they've always been there. The only way to know who's real? If you remember a bad memory about them. Which means, in a house full of sentient nonsense, Beth has to trust her gut, and her gut says, start shooting. Beth's secret weapon? Unfeeling logic. Unlike Jerry, who immediately loses his mind bonding with fake characters.
What are we doing?
After a full-on massacre of imaginary characters, Beth is feeling pretty damn confident. Then, we get to Mr. Poopy Butthole. Cute? Yes. Wholesome? Yes. A parasite? Beth thinks so. So in classic Beth fashion, she doesn't ask questions. She just shoots.
Oh, Beth, why?
I need an ambulance. There's been a shooting. My wife shot my wife shot a longtime family friend.
Shoots. And for the first time all episode, she is wrong. MPB was real the whole time. And now he's bleeding out on the floor. Cue the most awkward, uncomfortable silence in Rick and Morty history. And Beth? She just stands there, stone-faced. No apology, no regret, just wine drinking and avoidance. Because if there's one thing Beth Smith does not do, it's admitting she's wrong.
He's looking a lot better.
Listen, Beth, don't torture yourself.
Final thoughts. Beth is built different. By the end of the episode, the parasites are gone. The Smith family is traumatized. She just goes back to her wine like nothing happened. Moral of the story? Beth has zero hesitation when it comes to shooting people. She was way too good at that. And if you ever question whether Beth is a sociopath, just ask Mr. Poopy Butthole. This episode, the one where Beth falls in love with herself, the one where Jerry becomes weirdly emotionally stable, and the one that made Thanksgiving uncomfortable for everyone who watched it with their family. Welcome to Bethic Twinstinct, the episode that asks, what if self-love went way too far? And also, why is Jerry handling this better than anyone? Let's dive in. Beth x Beth, a relationship only a mirror could love. So, it's Thanksgiving. Rick, being the only person with sense, creates an infinite wine supply so he can mentally check out. Meanwhile, Beth and Space Beth start bonding. And by bonding, we mean flirting like a bad Wattpad fanfic. They play video games together. They have deep, no one gets me but you conversations. And then they start making out in the garage. Rick, just trying to survive Thanksgiving. Rick sees what's happening and immediately checks out. He doesn't try to stop it. He doesn't make fun of them. He just locks himself in the kitchen and drinks. Rick has been through infinite timelines of insanity, but even he is like, nope, I want nothing to do with this one. That's how you know things have gone too far. Yeah, that's your sign to burn it all down and start over. Final thoughts. Jerry won. Beth is confused and Rick is traumatized. By the end of the episode, Beth and Space Beth sort of break up.
The housewife and I'm the space lady, but you're the one that chewed me up and spit me out? I don't want to just forget about you.
Jerry somehow walks away with more confidence than ever. Rick remains blackout drunk, trying to forget all of this. The whole family agrees to never talk about this again. Moral of the story? Beth is literally her own type. Jerry pulled off the biggest emotional flex in history. And Rick? Well, Rick just wants to pretend this episode never happened. Alright, strap in, you bunch of space cadets, because Rattlestar Rick Lactica is about to break your mind like an interdimensional time travel snake. I'm talking chaos, self-awareness, and time paradoxes. And it's all wrapped up in a snake-themed mess that only Rick would get us into. There's a lot of sci-fi madness, a surprising amount of snakes, and of course, Rick is the cause of everything. Go figure, right?
God damn it.
What is that?
Obviously, it's a space snake.
Morty's snake-fueled hell. So, the episode kicks off when Rick and Morty end up on a planet populated by literal space snakes. You know, snakes with space helmets and hyper-evolved intellect, of course. Morty is already uncomfortable because, well, it's space and snakes. Put those together, and you've got existential crisis brewing in Morty's head. But things take a dark turn. Morty accidentally creates a time loop. I mean, it's classic Morty. All he had to do was just press a button and not mess with things he doesn't understand. But no, Morty being Morty, he presses the button, and next thing you know, the timeline is full of snakes. Morty just wants a simple adventure, but Rick's reckless behavior creates a situation where time itself goes completely off the rails. Rick's role in the snakeocalypse.
What 10? This is the same.
It's worse. Oh, no, I get it. Okay, it's more real.
Rick, of course, is mostly fine with the chaos. For Rick, time loops, alternate realities, and snake-on-snake warfare are just another Tuesday afternoon. He doesn't even blink at the fact that he's helped unleash multiple versions of a snake war that spans centuries. He literally walks into snake time, a timeline where snakes rule. Everything is just snakes fighting snakes. A little snake-on-snake action never hurt anyone, right? Except that it clearly will. It always does in the Rick and Morty universe. It's Rick at his finest. Instead of addressing the issue like a responsible adult, or, you know, like someone who isn't a goddamn sociopath.
Fall out of the sky.
He won't be in the sky, Beth, unless it's possible for Jerry to fuck up wearing shoes. Oh crap, he's gonna die.
What were you thinking?
He spends the episode sipping on space juice, while Morty gets dragged through the chaos he's caused. Rick doesn't even help Morty out of the mess. Rick's entire philosophy is summed up in one line. This is your problem now, Morty. Snake civilizations, time paradoxes, and the fallout. Now, to make things even worse, the snakes start building their own advanced civilization. And of course, they do it in a totally messed up way. We're talking about snake time travel, snake philosophers, and even a snake version of Jesus.
Anyone else want legs?
The more you get into it, the more you realize just how bad Morty's mistake was. He didn't just mess up a timeline. He turned an entire species into a time-warping snake army. Classic Morty. When will this kid ever learn? Rick's grand solution? Well, it's classic Rick, so naturally, he throws a grenade into the timeline to reset everything. He's like, oops, the snake society has evolved way too much, let's blow it all up. But guess what? The snakes start to realize the cyclical nature of their existence, and they get a little too self-aware. They start questioning the meaning of existence in a true Rick and Morty fashion. So after all the madness, Morty's emotional arc in this episode is like a hot mess of trauma, confusion, and maybe a little growth.
Why are they attacking us? I helped them.
The kid has to come to terms with the fact that his naivety is literally breaking the fabric of reality. He has to live with the consequences of being tricked by Rick's irresponsibility. But here's the thing, Morty doesn't even get a proper emotional resolution. Just a few lines of dialogue, and boom, he's right back in the chaos machine that is being Rick's grandson. Rick might not give a damn, but Morty is quietly learning that his decisions have far-reaching consequences, and no one else is going to clean up his mess.
Come on, Morty.
Man, I wonder why I had a black eye.
Morty, shut the fuck up and put these on.
It's just a damn shame it took an entire time travel snake war for him to catch on. The family's contribution to the chaos. Final thoughts. The Rick effect. By the end of the episode, what do we have? Well, we have another Rick-fueled disaster, Morty learning a slight lesson in responsibility, or not, and Rick casually walking away from the wreckage with a half-hearted, it'll be fine. Typical Rick, right?
Dude, we're just trying to do the right thing. It took a living snake back.
Get behind me. I will protect.
But this episode leaves us with some serious questions. How much more trauma can Morty handle? Seriously, this kid's been through it. How many times can Rick use his genius to just screw things up?
Seen this movie. Two guys leave the ship. One guy goes spinning away. You're staying in here where it's safe.
The number is honestly too high to count at this point. Are we even ready for a world where time travel is used to fix every single mistake? Does anyone ever learn? Or is this just how Rick and Morty keeps rolling? Creating chaos, blowing it up, and moving on to the next disaster. Moral of the story? Don't mess with time. Don't mess with snakes. And most importantly, never, ever follow Rick's lead in any kind of decision-making, because chaos always follows and nobody's ever learning anything. Alright, today we're talking about the episode that made everyone realize Beth is just a slightly less drunk version of Rick. The ABCs of Beth. A horrific fantasy world filled with monsters? Check. Beth questioning if she's just as sociopathic as her dad? Absolutely.
Oh my god, I'm my father.
Will someone just kill this B word?
Oh my god, I'm my father!
Rick casually offering to clone his daughter like it's a Tuesday? Oh yeah, it's that kind of episode. So buckle up. Because this is the moment we all had to ask, is Beth just Rick with a deeper need for validation? Let's get into it. Beth's childhood was a horror movie. So Rick drops a casual bombshell on the family. When Beth was a kid, she used to play in Fruipyland, a magical wonderland Rick built just for her. Sounds cute, right?
Fruipyland.
Nope, because Fruipyland is actually a nightmare. Turns out, Beth's childhood playmate Tommy got trapped there.
Your best friend Tommy, we know. Stop true crime bragging.
And instead of getting rescued, he had to eat the creatures to survive. Started reproducing with them. Yes, really. And basically became the king of an incestuous cannibal society.
I am the king of Fruipyland.
And whose fault is that? Oh yeah, Beth's. Because guess what? She pushed him in. Beth realizes she might be kinda evil. Up until now, Beth has always blamed Rick for her issues. But now, Eric for a kid. She has to face the fact that she was always kinda messed up. She used to make creepy inventions as a kid. Rick encouraged it. Harry. And now she's realizing she might be more like him than she thought.
I'm gonna go back in there, I'm getting Tommy, and I'm fixing this.
So how does Beth handle this existential crisis? By doubling down on the insanity, obviously. Instead of rescuing Tommy, she tries to kill him to cover up her past, because that's totally a normal, well-adjusted response. And that's some peak Rick-level behavior. Rick's totally normal offer. Clone yourself, Beth. After escaping Fruipyland, Beth does the only logical thing. She freaks out, blames her dad, and questions whether she even belongs with her family. And Rick, being the loving, supportive father that he is, offers to make her a clone so she can ditch her life entirely.
If you were to make a clone of Tommy, what would you need to get started?
One Beth stays. One Beth leaves to go have intergalactic adventures, and no one will ever know the difference. And then, we never find out what she chooses, because Beth either 1. Decided to stay and be a good mom, 2. Or pieced out, got replaced by a clone, and never looked back.
Make a clone of you. A perfect instance of you with all your memories, an exact copy in every way.
Either way, Beth had her ultimate Rick moment. She realized she could do whatever the hell she wanted, and chose herself over her family. Final thoughts. Beth was always this way. By the end of the episode, Tommy's life is ruined. Beth is more like Rick than ever, and we'll never know if the real Beth is even still on Earth. Moral of the story? Beth's childhood was straight up disturbing. She was always on the path to being like Rick, and if she really did swap places with a clone, we're just one bad day away from her going full mad scientist. Alright, buckle up, because this is Raising Gazorpazorp, and let me tell you, it's a classic case of how not to parent. In this episode, we watch as Morty gets a crash course in what it's like to be a father. Spoiler, it's an absolute disaster. Meanwhile, Rick does what Rick does best, absolutely nothing to help the situation. Classic Rick. It's like watching a bad sitcom, but it's also a train wreck you can't look away from. The perfect storm of Morty's awful parenting decision. The episode kicks off with Morty's sweet, naive Morty doing what he thinks is the right thing. He buys a sex robot from an interdimensional market, because why not, right?
You know, I thought that robot over there looked pretty cool, you know?
And ends up being accidentally responsible for the birth of a bizarre alien child. Classic Morty. Making terrible decisions and somehow finding himself in over his head.
I lost the chance to be careful, Rick. I'm a father now.
But here's the twist, this child. It's not just any kid. It's a Gazorpazorp, an alien species known for being both aggressively violent and unreasonably intelligent. Oh, and did I mention the fact that these creatures grow up way too fast? Morty barely blinks, and suddenly he's got a 7-foot-tall, emotionally unstable teenager on his hands. So you know, no big deal. Just another Tuesday in the multiverse. Rick's parenting skills. What would he know? Meanwhile, Rick is just kind of, doing his usual leave Morty to figure it out thing. Does Rick offer any guidance or advice on how to deal with an alien toddler? Does he even care that Morty is, quite literally, holding the parenting bag? No. Instead, Rick's like, here, have fun, Morty. I'm gonna go look for more dangerous adventures for myself. It's honestly amazing how Rick can be a genius, but somehow be completely useless in the one area that matters: responsibility. Morty is the one who's stuck doing the emotional heavy lifting, dealing with a literal alien child that grows up in a matter of hours and has more rage than a Redditor after being told they're wrong. And the worst part? Rick's completely disconnected from the whole thing, treating the mess like it's no big deal. Rick's response to the emotional disaster unfolding in front of him? Hey Morty, that's on you, bud. You're the one who made the decision to keep that alien spawn. The Gazorpazorpian showdown. Morty versus his own creation. Fast forward, and the Gazorpazorp child, now a teenager, is ready to tear Morty's world apart. Why? Because Gazorpazorps are all about violence and dominance. This kid doesn't exactly know how to properly handle emotions. Summer's revenge mission, the other half of the Smith family drama. Meanwhile, Summer, our sassy teen, gets stuck in a completely different mess. She heads off to deal with the Gazorpazorpian matriarch, who, it turns out, is basically a hyper-feminist, militant leader. And guess what? This matriarch has some issues with how her species women are treated. Oh, the irony. Summer manages to do what nobody else could do, talks sense into the Gazorpazorpian matriarch.
You speak when you're spoken to, Dingaling. It's true, though. One of your babies was born on Earth.
Are you the ruler of this Earth?
How did you know?
And flip the entire social structure of their species on its head. You go, girl. It's the type of unintended cultural revolution you don't expect to see in an interdimensional sci-fi sitcom. But here we are, the conclusion. Morty, Rick, and parenting failures. In the end, Rick does not learn a thing from this experience. He's still the same emotionally distant, irresponsible scientist who leaves a trail of destruction in his wake. Morty, on the other hand, learns a valuable lesson about the consequences of his decisions, sort of. He realizes that, just maybe, he should think things through next time before trying to parent an alien species. But here's the thing, Morty's still caught in Rick's orbit of chaos. Rick, the man who has done everything wrong in this episode, just sort of shrugs it off and goes on to the next adventure. Meanwhile, Morty's left standing there, emotionally scarred but mildly wiser. Final thoughts. The real lesson here? What do we learn from all of this? Well, here's the takeaway. Rick doesn't care about anyone's problems except his own. Morty's a mess, but at least he tries. Summer's low-key a genius when it comes to dealing with intergalactic feminists. And most importantly, parenting is hard, but when you're dealing with intergalactic parenting, it's basically a recipe for disaster.
Can't all be raised like reptiles by a mentally ill scientist. What the
Listen to me. I am not rewarding this behavior.
Moral of the story. Think twice before buying a sex robot that can create a genocidal alien offspring. And also, don't trust Rick to help with your emotional crises. He's just gonna make it worse. Alright, today we're talking about the episode that made us ask, which Beth is the real Beth? How did Jerry manage to be kind of awesome? And most importantly, does Rick actually care about his family? Beth versus Beth. Who's the real one? So Rick, being the galaxy's worst father, did a little thing called cloning his own daughter, and then erasing his memory of which one was real. One Beth stayed home, raised a family.
Dr. Wong had a cancellation today. Anybody up for a family session? I could do
down,
that.
clown.
Not sure my therapy puppet will be done in time.
Great, because she specifically asked you to stop bringing puppets.
And drank wine. One Beth became a badass space rebel who fights the Galactic Federation, and neither one knew which one was the clone.
Something about the eyes, the shameless abandonment of your family. However can I live with myself? One theory, I was designed by your father to live with myself, which would mean you made a
Rick could have checked at any time, but he didn't. Because if he did, that would mean taking responsibility. And well, we all know Rick doesn't do that. So now we have two Beths, both equally pissed off, both realizing their dad is the absolute worst. Meanwhile, who's off doing his own thing? Rick's worst nightmare, being held accountable. By the end of the episode, Beth and Space Beth team up to take down the Galactic Federation. And Rick? Oh, Rick is facing the one thing he can't outdrink, his own failures. Because both Beths finally ask him, which one of us is the real one?
You mind blew yourself? You literally don't even know which of your daughters is real. Of course you don't. Why am I surprised?
And Rick is spit that. Rick goes to check the clone vial, only to realize he erased the memory of switching them. Meaning even he doesn't know. For the first time, Rick is speechless. And then, both Beths leave him behind. Even Jerry gets a happy ending. Rick ends the season completely alone. Final thoughts. Jerry low-key won this episode. By the time the credits roll, Beth gets her independence. Space Beth gets closure. Jerry somehow manages to hold on to his marriage. And Rick? He finally realizes that his family is moving on without him. Moral of the story? Beth doesn't need Rick anymore. Rick is lying on a table, transformed into a pickle. Morty. Grandpa, why did you turn yourself into a pickle?
I'm just trying to figure out why you would do this. Why anyone would do this.
Rick. Because I can, Morty. I'm Pickle Rick.
The reason anyone would do this, if they could, which they can't, would be because they could.
Rick gets washed into a sewer, completely helpless, but then kills a rat with his teeth. Builds an exoskeleton out of rat parts. Turns into a full-on killing machine.
Yes!
Rick stumbles into a secret government facility. Wages war against an entire army. Fights Jaguar, a deadly assassin, and wins. Dr. Wong. Rick avoids emotions like it's a sport, and you all enable him.
You seem to alternate between viewing your own mind as an unstoppable force and as an inescapable curse.
Beth. Yeah, but he's a genius? Dr. Wong. And also self-destructive. Rick escapes, hops into the car. Beth. How was therapy? Rick. Total waste of time, let's get burgers.